Are you struggling to move or copy data between folders in your AWS S3 bucket? You're not alone. Today, we're going to explore all the methods you can use to make this process smooth and easy. I totally get it. Moving data around in the cloud can be confusing, especially with all the different tools available. But don't worry, we're here to simplify it for you. One user recently asked, what are all the methods for moving or copying data from one folder to another on AWS S3? This is a great question, and we're going to break it down step by step. Before we dive into the methods, let's understand the issue. AWS S3 is a powerful tool, but it can be tricky to navigate if you're not familiar with its commands and options. And stick around. At the end of this video, I'll share a pro tip that will make managing your S3 buckets even easier. Let's start with the first method, using the AWS Command Line Interface, or CLI. This is one of the easiest ways to move or copy data. First, you'll need to download and install the AWS CLI on your instance. Once you have it installed, run the command AWS configure to set up your configuration. After that, you can use this simple command to copy your data. Now let's move on to the second method, using Python with the AWS CLI. This method is also quite effective. You can write a simple script to move your data. Here's a quick example of how you can do this. Make sure to import the necessary libraries and set your environment correctly before running the command. Finally, we have the third method, using Boto3, which is the AWS SDK for Python. This is a great option if you prefer working with Python scripts. Here's how you can use Boto3 to copy data. Just make sure to set up your bucket and key correctly to avoid any errors. If you encounter an error like invalid bucket name, remember that bucket names must follow specific rules. Make sure your bucket name is valid. If you're curious about how to understand bucket connectivity with Boto3 and the concept of keys, don't worry. We'll cover that in detail. Here's a pro tip. Always double-check your bucket names and paths before running commands. This can save you a lot of headaches. And there you have it. Now you know how to move and copy data in AWS S3 using different methods. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks. To begin moving or copying data in AWS S3, the user can utilize the AWS Command Line Interface, or AWS CLI. First, the user needs to download and install the AWS CLI on their instance. For Windows users, they can find the installation guide at the official AWS documentation. Once the AWS CLI is installed, the user should configure it by running the command AWS configure. This will prompt them to enter their AWS access key, secret key, region, and output format. After configuration, the user can execute a single command to copy files. For users who prefer using Python, the second method involves using the AWS CLI through a Python script. The user can import the necessary libraries and execute the command to move files from one S3 folder to another. Another option is to use the Boto3 library in Python, which allows for more direct interaction with S3. The user can create a resource for S3 and use the copy method to move files between folders. Lastly, the user should be aware of the bucket naming conventions and the concept of keys in S3. The key refers to the unique identifier for an object within a bucket, which can include folder paths. If the user encounters an error regarding the bucket name, they should ensure it adheres to the naming rules. An alternative approach provided by another user involves using a Python function to copy files from one S3 folder to another. This method lists objects in the source folder and copies each file to the new location, handling errors along the way.